The Badgers play 7 games against potential ranked opponents this year, according to preseason rankings. Are they going to go over 500 plus the 5 most exciting players to tune into this year on the Badgers football team? Locked On Badgers, let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings. Really do appreciate you tuning in, making this one of your first listens, making this part of your daily routine, and being an everydayer. Thank you for that. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Today's episode, it's a call-in show, so I put the link to the show in the chat. If you do want to join, I promise I'm going to do a better job of planning these out. I kind of impromptu these, and people reach out and say, dude, I didn't even know it was happening. So we're going to start doing these at least every other week. We're going to plan it out in advance, but always love getting the community on. So if you want to jump on the show, the link is in the chat. It's also on my Twitter. Let me know if you can't find it in the chat, but yeah, jump on. Come give your thoughts. Today's topic, we are talking about the 7 toughest games the Badgers have. What do you think their record is going to be in those 7? Plus, some thoughts on Gard. Is his portal class this year better than last year's? And the 5 most exciting players to tune into this year for Badgers football, just from an entertainment standpoint. All of that and more. Again, dial into the show if you want to. Must have the camera on and be mostly clothed. Well, we ran into that before, but let's start here. So here are the 7 toughest games according to preseason rankings. And I wanted to break this out a little different than what we talked about recently, because we keep talking about the tough 4, like the big 4 in the schedule. How are you going to do against Ohio State and Michigan and Oregon and Bama? But you still got Iowa, and you still got an Indiana team that went to the playoffs last year. And you have Illinois, who very quietly was really good last year, returns their quarterback, was ranked pretty highly, and by some polls is in the top 15 to top 10 this year. So it's really a big 7. It's not a big 4. It's what are you going to do against this big 7? And I'd argue Illinois, Iowa, they're going to be every bit as tough this year as Michigan is probably. So let's break it down. How are you going to do against the top 7? I'm going to go game by game for me, and you let me know where you're at in the chat. If you want to call in and jump on the show, let me know. The link is in the chat. Evan Malone says we only have 3 tough games. I don't know, man. Let me know. I'm guessing your 3 tough games, Evan, are Ohio State, Oregon, and Bama, right? I mean, I'd be pretty shocked if those weren't your 3. I don't know. There's never a scenario where going to Michigan isn't going to be a tough game. I just don't think that's never going to be a layup, going to Michigan, in my opinion. And then I think Illinois and Indiana have come up. I don't buy all the Indiana like hype, but they certainly aren't the Indiana doormats that we hung 83 on previously. They have definitely come up in the world. So I think that they're tough as well. And Iowa's always tough. Iowa beat us 40-12 last year or whatever. I mean, I know that was tough. And this year's version of the Badgers isn't last year's version of the Badgers, but I think all those games are tough. Okay, let me give you what I think is going to happen. Right now, if I had to put a ton of money on it, Bama, I think, is a loss. I think you go to Tuscaloosa. It's week 3. They're just too talented. They're too good. And you have to go cover Ryan Williams. You have to go down to Tuscaloosa. I think that's a loss. I think that's 0-1. I still think you probably lose to Michigan. Now, Michigan, you get them after a bye. So you have your first group of games. Then you get a bye, which is critical. That is a great bye heading into Michigan. But you still got to go there. They still are going to have a talent advantage. This is a team that did beat Ohio State last year and beat Bama in a bowl game. Regardless of how good Underwood is, if he's anything decent, they're better at quarterback than they were last year then. And they're still going to be able to run the ball. They got some nice portal pickups. They have some pieces they have to replace offensively, especially with the tight end. But we have pieces we have to replace as well. And they tend to do a better job of reloading in the portal and the recruiting classes. So I think you're 0-2 with those. Iowa at home, I think we get Iowa at home. I'm going to give us a win there. I think we beat Iowa at home. It's a revenge game. I think they lose a lot defensively. They're going to come back to the pack a little bit. I like where we are in the trenches. Iowa's a win. Ohio State, I think this is a close one. Ohio State is going to be a close game. I think you get them at home. Who knows what their quarterback situation is going to look like? I just think, man, you're coming off a Michigan game and then an Iowa game. It's a tough task to get those body blows just poof, 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 back to back to back. I don't know if you're taking Ohio State out after having to play Michigan, after having to play Iowa. It just feels like the team might be getting worn down. And by the way, they got this guy named Jeremiah Smith, plus a bunch of other receivers. So I'm going to give it to Ohio State there. And you are now 1-4 with the tough games, in my opinion. Then you get Oregon, got to go to Autzen. I think that's another loss. I just don't think at the end of that 4-game stretch, that might be to me the most unwinnable game in this group. To have to go to Autzen after those back-to-back tough games. But then you get Indiana at home. I think you beat Indiana at home. Or sorry, away. You go to Indiana. I'm not convinced Indiana's here to stay. Like, let's chill out on the Indiana fans calling for the playoffs again, having the best receiving core in the Big Ten, which I heard an Indiana podcast talk about. Like, hello, you're still in a conference with Ohio State, Indiana Hoosiers. I think you get them. I think you go to Bloomington, you beat them. I'm not sure what year 2 is going to look like in Cignetti's system, and teams aren't going to be surprised by them anymore. They're going to have more of a mark on them. They lost a lot of talent. I don't know how they're going to play CJ West on the defensive line. Curtis Rourke was a winner for them at quarterback. I don't think it's as easy as they think to go 2 years successful in a row, and they'll have a bit of a tougher schedule. I think you beat Indiana, and I think you get Illinois at home. Again, I think that program's in a better spot, but I also think they lost a lot of talent, lost receivers. I'm not as big on Altmaier as some other people are. So that's how I think you go in those 7 games. I think you go 3-4, and maybe it's an uninspired 3-4 when people look at it and say, well, yeah, you still lost to the 4 big prestige teams. Yeah, I think you do. But this is a walk before you run type of a season. You got to walk before you run. Last year, this was a 5-win team. I think they do better this year. I still don't think they got enough horses and enough horsepower to beat one of those 4 top marquee teams on the schedule. All right, let's get some of your guys here. Luke Peace says playoffs this year. Let's go, Luke. Love that. Evan says we are going 8-4 and we are beating Michigan. And out of the 3 toughest games, I say we would have a chance to upset OSU. I'm looking forward to seeing Jones, Yak, Billy Edwards. Oh, that's our next question. I love that. Yeah. I love your take on OSU, Evan. Like, I agree. I think that's a team that we could be very close to upsetting. I don't hate that as an upset call. You know, Ohio State still seems a little unsettled at quarterback, and we know that the talent they're going to have at the skill spots, but Wisconsin has hung with Ohio State at home. They've hung with Penn State at home. They've hung with Oregon at home. I don't think that's a crazy take at all. And here's the thing. If you're right on Michigan, okay, and I think we're potentially getting a little ahead of ourselves, thinking we're going to go to Michigan and beat Michigan. But if you're right on them, I think they're going to beat Maryland before the bye. I think they can beat Iowa. Then suddenly you could be going to that Ohio State game with 1 loss. You could go think of the scenario there, right? You could be going into that Ohio State game. Your only loss is to Alabama and Tuscaloosa. You'd have a ton of momentum. You'd be at home. It'd be a home night game in Camp Randall. That place would be friggin' rocking. We know what Camp Randall is when there's excitement, when the Badgers are good, when it's a good home game. So if your scenario is correct, man, and you get that momentum going and you know Camp Randall's going to be rocking at that point, absolutely you could upset Ohio State. Absolutely you could. So I don't hate that at all. I'm not as down on Michigan, I think, as other people are. Evan Hounsa says, good evening, fellas. What's up, Evan? Andrew says Badgers record is 7-5. Evan says we're beating Iowa, Minnesota, Indiana, and Illinois. Those teams don't scare me. So here's what I'd say. Those teams didn't used to scare us, but they've gotten better and we've gotten worse. Like, that gap has just, I miss the days when we treated those schools like speed bumps. Like those schools weren't problems for us, but Minnesota's won 3 of the last 4 against us. Indiana went to the playoffs last year. Illinois had our number. Iowa beat us 42-10 or 42-10 last year. I hear you, but I think those are all kind of games that could go either way at this point with our program's trajectory. And maybe that's even being kind. So, I mean, I hear you on that, and I'm not here to dissuade you from being optimistic. I'm maybe not quite as much there, and I wish I was. All right, we're going to take a quick second again. Anything else you guys have in the chat, let me know. If you want to jump on the show, let me know. The link is in the chat as well. We're going to talk about the 5 most exciting players to tune into next year on the Badgers football team. That's going to be a fun one. I got some of your comments in the chat already. But first, a quick second for our friends of the show. And a quick second, as always, say thank you for tuning in to Locked On Badgers, making this one of your first listens. I appreciate you. Today's episode brought to you by our incredible friends over at FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing. Baseball's going on, soccer, golf, they're all there. I love baseball in the summer, and I love betting on baseball in the summer with FanDuel. Live in-game betting. There's parlays, there's futures, there's teasers. It's all there. You can bet in any way you want to bet on any of the summer action that you want to rock with. And FanDuel makes it incredibly easy. It's easy to use. And I always talk about the fast payouts. Like, we've all got a friend. I'm not going to name my friend, CJ. I'm not going to name my friend, but we all got a friend that like still owes us money. And you're like, dude, come on now. Like, this has been a good minute, or by good minute, I mean a couple years now. Like, let's pay up. FanDuel's not like that. Quick payouts, easy payouts, simple payouts. You're going to get all that over on FanDuel. Right now, if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, let's jump back into this again. If you want to jump on the show, I see Brian just jumped in the queue. Have the camera on, but jump in the show. I'll put the invite back in there. This is always a fun time to get the community involved. Jump on and just talk about what you think our record is going to be this year in our tough games. And if not, just chat in the chat too, and that is more than welcome. All right, let's jump into the next segment here. Talk about the most exciting players and get to Brian next on Locked On Badgers. All right, Brian, man, first up in the chat, got the Wisconsin background there. I love it. What do you think, man? I listed out what I think is going to happen in the toughest schedule or the toughest games here. Where are you at?
I'm really in a they got to show it to me mode for football right now. So I think two of those games, I think, is all we're going to get. Maybe Indiana, Illinois, or Iowa, maybe two of those three. So I think we're going to be about 6-6 overall and get two of those 7.
Okay, 6-6. Is there what's the game that you most think that we could upset somebody? What are you, if getting spicy, where do you think that we could have the best chance?
Out of those 7 they list, I really do not believe in Indiana. I think they were almost entirely a product of their schedule last year. So I think they're going to come back to earth hard. So that is the one out of those that I really think is, I mean, that's the easiest one on that list to me.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. I think Indiana played an easy schedule. And I also think, let me know if you agree or not, there's something to sneaking up on people. Indiana has historically never been taken that seriously. They're going to get a better shot this year. They're going to get people's attention this year. It's not as easy to do it again.
No, definitely. I mean, everybody's, like you said, he was halfway through the season before anybody took him at all serious last year. So, and by that time they had momentum. They were feeling good. But I don't see him repeating that.
I agree. So let me ask you this: what's the game that you look at and you say no chance? I am a Badger fan. I love this team. I don't think they got a shot.
There's 3 of them. I hate to say it right now, but I mean, Bama, Oregon, and Ohio State. I just, short of once in a decade kind of miracle game, I don't see any of those 3 that we might give them a game for 3 quarters or something, but I don't. Right now, the way they've looked the last couple of years, I can't say that any of those 3 are games that I can see us winning.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I have a question for you because I've been thinking about this in my head. The Badgers are probably never going to play Bama again. I mean, realistically, in the regular season, maybe they meet in the playoffs, but would it be worth it to take a trip to Tuscaloosa? Even though you just said there's no chance you think they're going to beat that team, to see the Badgers play there could be pretty special, right? Or no?
Oh yeah, I mean, look, if I had the the time and the means to do it, I mean, it'd be definitely one of those things just to say you were there, to go down to one of the Blue Bloods and at the time when the Badgers were there. So yeah, it'd definitely be worth it if I hit the lottery tomorrow, I'll make the reservations the next day. But that's just because of a chance to go see go to some place as special as Tuscaloosa.
Yeah. So I want to hit the next segment here, which is most exciting players this year. Who are you most excited to watch this year on the football team?
My first one was Yap, just because I know we've talked about this, on the show. You guys have talked about it a ton, but just for the life of me, I can understand a guy just getting completely buried on the depth chart with what he was doing last year. So I just want to see him have a breakout year. He's definitely my number one. I guess if I had to list another quick 5, if Billy Edwards doesn't end up on that list, we're in a world of hurt. So I'm hoping he is that guy. And then I think I'm really looking forward to seeing what Christian Legro does on the defensive side. I love watching Vinny, so I always like watching him. And then I guess hopefully it's again one of the backs, whether it's Dupree or one of the other, young backs, kind of breaks out. But so I mean, I'm normally kind of an optimistic Badger fan, but I'm looking at the roster this year. It's almost hard to come up with a fifth guy unless somebody steps up. I'm kind of like, I had to stop and think, like, is it going to be maybe one of the freshmen like a Hilton or a Posa or somebody like that that'll be fun? But it's just, I hate to say it, but I mean, it's hard to come up with five guys almost on this roster right now.
No, I think that's fair. I love your Yak one, though. I'm really excited to see Yak play this year because I think he deserves it. I also got, on my list, I got Jaden Ballard, just because I think if he's the real deal, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch him play. I love your Allegro pick. I think, I didn't have Billy Edwards, but I think you're totally right. Like, if he's not ultimately on this list, this Badger team might be in some trouble. And then I also put Tackett Curtis, just because I think he could be kind of fulfilling some of that upside this year. Man, Brian, I appreciate it, man. We got JB jumping in the queue too, so we're going to get to him quick for these five players. But, dude, always welcome. Appreciate you jumping on the show and giving us your thoughts, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate you, Brian. JB's in the queue, although I don't. There's JB. What's up, JB? JB's frozen. I don't see JB. JB, if you're there, man, come back. I want to go back to what Brian was saying with some of the five best players here, the five most exciting players. Again, this isn't the best players. This is just what I think are the most exciting players this year. And he's kind of right. It's hard to look up and down this roster and find established stars, guys that you're going to tune into. Like before Melvin Gordon's final season at Madison, you knew you were going to tune into him. He was the ticket. This is who I wrote down on my five. I've got Jaden Ballard, Dylan Jones, because, again, I think he's going to be a star. Vinny Anthony, who is really maybe one of the more underrated receivers in the Big Ten. I've got Tackett Curtis. Again, for all the reasons I talked about, I think his upside could be tremendous. And then I have Tretch as my last one. I was thinking about Nicholas Clayton. JB, if you're there, man, you keep joining and rejoining. I was thinking about Nicholas Clayton, but I just don't know how much he's going to play this year. So I ended up going with Tretch. I see Gabe. Gabe is a good friend in the show. He says no Tretch. Tretch is my fifth because Tretch does give you some, again, talking about entertainment, talking about players that could explode. He gives you some ability in the open space, right? He gives you some ability in the open field to make somebody miss. That's my five guys, right? Five most entertaining players that I think you're going to want to tune into this year. Jaden, Dylan, Vinny Anthony, Tretch, and Tackett Curtis. So 3 receivers. That's not terrible. JB, try to hit us back later. He says the internet stinks. Let's get some comments here. Tretch says receiver will, and Andrew says Tretch receiver will have a great season. It feels like Tretch is falling a little victim to the same thing I've talked about with Jamel Howard. If you remember when Tretch came in, that was a guy who was committed, and then we lost him, and then he went to Arizona, and then he recommitted, went to a major high school. His film was great, and we were really excited. And then it didn't click right away. And then it didn't really click right away last year again. But what we've also learned, he's played with subpar quarterback play. He hasn't played with an offensive coordinator that we really like. And it feels like some people, and maybe even myself, are a little too down on Tretch now because of that. It didn't click right away. Now we're like, there's a little bit of post-hype letdown, but he could be really good in this system. Out of the slot, I can tell you right now, there's people in the program that are really high on what he's going to do. And I can also tell you right now, there are people in the program that are exceptionally buzzing about Jaden Ballard and his physical tools. I think it's better than they even realized. I think it's better than advertised. He could have a tremendous season this year. All right, let's get some more comments in here. Again, really do appreciate everybody tuning in as always. We will do more of these call-in shows, and I'm going to do a better job of having them on regular days so people can plan for them. But let's go here. Rick Leggett says they will be improved this year, 6-6. Tyler Strieber, a good friend of the show, Tyler, has a loss at Bama, Michigan, OSU, Oregon, Illinois. He has a 2-5 record in the Big Seven, which honestly, it's pretty realistic. Let's look at it another way. Which of those games are we going to be, we being Wisconsin, going to be favored in? It's not going to be Bama, Michigan. I think maybe Iowa. It's not going to be Ohio State, Oregon. It's maybe Illinois, and it's probably not going to be on the road to Indiana. So by that logic, 2-5 is probably about where Vegas would have us in that stretch. Will Hanna says 6-6 this year. Evan Malone says we have Iowa at home. Agree. That's a big deal. And yeah, we didn't even talk about the X game. Phil, who's been in a ton of our game chats, our show chats lately. So I appreciate you, Phil, said the X game's always going to be tough as well. I could have thrown that in there. I use these 7 because these 7 teams are pretty universally ranked preseason. But yeah, Minnesota's not easy either. There's 8 tough games on this schedule if you look at it like that, because Minnesota is never going to be a cakewalk for us. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. I'm going to get into my 3 most exciting basketball players this year. Plus, is Gard's portal class better this year than last year? Again, if you want to jump in the show, I'm going to put the show invite one more time in here. Would love to have you talk about whatever you want to talk about. That link is going in here. And if not, throw your thoughts in the chat. Who are your 3 players you're most excited to see on the basketball side this year? That's coming up next. Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show. Also, a quick second to say thank you for tuning into Locked On Badgers as always. Really do appreciate you. Let's get into a couple of these other comments here. Let me catch back up with where we are in the chat. Christopher says, until I see something different in the Fickle era, I can't say we're going to win more than 6 games. He is 5-7, most realistic with this schedule. Ethan says we beat Iowa, Minnesota, and whoever else may be a toss-up. And everyone else may be a toss-up, so can't say. Love the optimism from Nick. He's saying 8 to 9 wins. Alabama upset alert. Beat Michigan and Ohio State. Beat Iowa and Minnesota. He says, call me crazy, but I believe. Dude, I'm not here to step on anybody's optimism. In fact, I'm an optimistic guy by nature. I really am. I mean, I've picked up a hitchhiker. I've been a hitchhiker. I have gone door to door. Like I trust people, man. I trust life. I am an optimistic dude. So I'm not here to step on anyone's optimism. So 8 to 9 wins, Nick, I'm going to clip that. We'll save it. And when it happens, we'll give you all the credit, man. I'm all about it. And if you go down to Bama, I talked about this with the Ohio State game, right? But let's just game plan this a bit further. Let's take Nick's scenario to heart. Let's say you potentially upset Alabama. I think you're beating Maryland in the Billy Edwards revenge game. Then you have a bye. Then you go into Michigan with a ton of momentum, where even if you lose to them, you can still have that scenario where with one loss, you could be hosting Ohio State. That'd be 2 ranked teams under the lights in Camp Randall. Bro, let's go. I mean, that would be incredible. So if Nick's right here, like, I'm all about it. I would love that. Nothing would make me happier, man. Let's see a couple other comments in here. Ethan says every game is a big game for pick this year. Could we say hot seat? I don't think it's a hot seat year, but I think it's the year before the hot seat year. If it doesn't go well, if it doesn't go, I mean, it's year 3 for him. He has to have a little more patience. I mean, I think we in general have to have a little more patience, but this is the year before it. This is the year before. This is kind of a year where this thing could go in either direction. So, yeah, I don't think it's a hot seat year, but I think we're on the precipice of that. Let's see. Nick B wins. He has 8-9. Again, we talked about Nick, 8-4, 9-3. Ethan, man, appreciate you, brother. Says, like the stream so more fans get updates. Man, appreciate you, dude. Really do. It means a ton. JB says his internet sucks. Yeah, I got that. Coach Mack, friend of the show, has been on the show, says, I'm ready for RBU to return this year, as well as breakout season by Hilton. I would love it. I think Grimes primes us for that. I think Grimes and a little better depth in the running back room. I still worry a little bit about our offensive line. Is Kevin Haywood a bigger loss in the run game or the pass game? I think probably the pass game. So in that sense, maybe you lean even heavier on the offensive line. Maybe you're even a little more heavy there if you had to be. I do think this is something Grimes and Fickle both want to establish first. So I'll also say this. I think there's going to be games where I know Coach Grimes wants to throw the ball. I know he wants to take shots. I think there's going to be games where they lean really heavily on the run game to try to keep it close against teams that maybe have a little bigger stable of talent. Think the Ohio States, the Oregons. In those games, you may see them really run the ball a ton and give guys like Dylan Jones and Cade and Dupree a chance to establish themselves and kind of control some game flow. P says Ballard will be one of the better receivers in the Big Ten. Here's the thing. If he is, and we already know we have a Vinny Anthony, and we think Tretch could be a guy, and like you start connecting these dots and everything in football, you know, there's people who watch this show, they know ball. Everything in football is connected. And if your receivers are better and stronger and you've upgraded a little bit at quarterback and Dylan Jones is better, all these things play into each other. And at the end of it, I think you have a chance for a pretty good offense here. I think you've addressed a lot of the issues if the offensive line can hold up, right? If the offensive line can hold up, can give Edwards enough time. I think there's a chance for a pretty good offense here, a pretty dynamic offense that can hit some deep shots and run the ball. That's not an easy thing to defend. I'm pretty excited about that. All right, let's talk about the 3 basketball players I'm most excited for this year. And I put these in order. I didn't put the football ones in order because there's more guys. Number 1 for me is John Blackwell. I am so excited to see what I think could be the last year, is likely the last year of John Blackwell in Madison. I think he's going to be a killer. With Nick Boyd coming in, I think he's going to be a version of Johnny Davis, where different types of players a little bit, but also kind of similar in their ability to get in the paint, just kind of physical dogs. He won't be the two-way player that Johnny Davis is, because that's something uniquely innate to who Johnny Davis is and was, but a version of that type of guy offensively for the Badgers, I think you're going to get. So I'm so excited to see what we get from John Blackwell this year. Number 2, Nolan Winter. I've talked about it. The metrics love him. It's just, what's he going to look like with a bigger load on his plate? And I think it could be really good. I think there's a chance this is his last year in Madison as well. People can call me crazy on that. I think he's that talented and that good. Excuse me. Sorry about that. And then for number 3, I have Nick Boyd. We haven't had a guy like him in a while. And I was thinking back, and let me know if I'm missing somebody. Let me know if I'm missing somebody off the top of my head, but a taller pass first point guard, a bigger, because you've had, Trayvon Hughes and Jordan Taylor. You've had Brad Davidson. You had Trice. A lot of the Badger point guards, a lot of the Badger lead guards. And last year, I'd argue, I don't even know if we really had one, but maybe it was, Klesmit or, Kamari McGee off the bench. Boyd is a little taller. He's a little longer. He's more of a true point guard. He's a master with the pick and roll. He can hit open shots, but he can really get in the paint. I'm very excited to see what he does. And then I put like a honorable mention, Austin Rapp. And Austin Rapp, the first 3, Blackwell, Boyd, and Winter, I'm really excited to see him this year. Austin Rapp, I'm just kind of like, I don't know what we're going to get there. He's young. There's a chance the Big Ten could eat him up a little bit with size and physicality and athleticism. But there's also a chance he could be a really good floor stretching 4. I just don't know with him, man. He's one of my biggest question marks. So I'm watching him with trepidation, potential excitement, curiosity. He could really augment this offense and unlock layers to this offense with his spacing. But he could also get kind of beaten up defensively. And I just don't know. So I put all those guys there. Brian Axness says, obviously good friend of the show. We hear from Brian a lot today as well. Blackwell, Winter, and Boyd. Yeah, that's my 3 for sure. Tyler Strieber, Blackwell, Winter, and Boyd. I love this one from Phil, man. Kinzinger, Boyd, and Janicki. Because, again, maybe it's more of I know what I'm expecting from Blackwell. I'm really excited to tune in to see what I get from Kins. I think he's going to play as a freshman. I'm putting it out there. If I'm wrong, clip it, throw it back in my face. Like, we don't delete anything. All these takes are here. They don't go anywhere. And I own my takes, good and bad. I think Kins is going to play this year. I think he's wired the right way. He's got some Brad Davidson DNA in him. And then Janicki, man, if Janicki makes a jump, that would be enormous for this team. I think the intangibles are there. The feel for the game's there. He's got to shoot better. Sometimes we overcomplicate things and we talk about, footwork, and he's just got to shoot better. And it's in his bag because I've seen him practice. I've talked to people who have seen him practice. The shooting's in his bag, but it needs to come out in games. If you remember Brevin Pritzel, took him several years. He was a great shooter, great prep shooter, shot well in practice. It took him several years to do it in game action. Janicki's got that in his bag, but he's got to bring it out. It's got to come out in games. All right, a couple more things in here. Let's see. We had JB. Tyler Strieber. Ryan, do you agree with how you lose matters? If you're 2-5 in the Big 7, but they're competitive close, is that better than straight losing, or is a loss no matter what? I love this question. And no surprise that it's coming from a guy like Tyler who knows ball and who's pretty sharp. I think it matters a ton. Because I'm a big process guy. I really am. I am a big process guy, and the process matters. So playing competitively eventually leads to winning close games. So to me, it's a big deal. It shows progress. It shows that you're close. It's much like in baseball, launch angle and velocity and those types of things. It matters because it means you're more likely to get more hits. It doesn't mean you're actually going to get more hits, but it means the work you're doing is translating into the game. And I think if you're closer, it means the work you're doing in the weight room It means the work you're doing in recruiting. It means the work you're doing in the X's and O's in game planning. If you're close in these games, but you're losing close games, it means you're better in those areas. You've gotten closer. You've closed the gap. And if you continue to close the gap and you continue to get incrementally better, then eventually you're going to break through. That's just how it works. So I'm not a fan of moral losses. Your moral wins. Whatever. I can't think of the right term. A loss is a loss, but how you lose to me does matter because it shows you that you're closing the gap. You're not going to go from, what I'm benching to 300 pounds overnight, but can I go from where I am to adding 20 pounds to that bench in 2 months? And then from 2 months from there, can I add another 20 pounds? It's all about incremental gains done consistently. And that's how you grow. That's how you grow in anything in life. So I love that question. I could do a whole show on that. Let's go Robert Swartzen here. Will this team be scrappy? Think back to Dakota Dixon. Does that dude from LSU make it off the field with this team? I hope this team will be scrappy, man. I think it's impossible to say until the pads pop. We heard last year the team would be scrappier. We did. We heard they were going to practice with more physicality in practice, that they were going to hit each other more, and we were amped up about that. And that last year's team wasn't scrappy. It wasn't tough enough. It wasn't angry enough over getting beaten up. It just wasn't. So I hope this year's team is feistier. I think they're going to be better, which just helps. But they have to prove it, right? They're going to have to prove it. And yeah, like that Dakota Dixon thing where the LSU guy, if you watch that game, Dakota Dixon picks off the pass to win the game against LSU in Lambeau. And then an LSU offensive lineman with a late hit, really a flagrant hit, easily could have really hurt Dakota Dixon. Yeah, if there's a moment like that this year, what will the team do? I like to think that they'll respond accordingly, but we got to see it. We just got to see it before we know it'll happen. P, again, great friend of the show, and my mouse stopped working. He says his top three in order: Winter, Boyd, and Blackwell. And he also says Coach Mack says winter is coming. I love that. Yeah, artificial badger, get rap in the gym with BC. I would be all for that. Listen, rap could go either way. Like rap could be a really interesting floor spacing big that fits the modern game of basketball and fits what Greg Gard's wanting to do. Or it could be a little like Xavier Amos, where it just didn't translate because the Big Ten was just a little too big, a little too physical, and a little too strong for him to create the space that he needs to operate. So I'm fascinated by it. I don't really know which way it's going to go. All right, we're going to wrap it up there. Again, on Wisconsin, appreciate you guys so much. We got one more question in here. Robert Swartz says, how you lose 100% matters. I agree. One more question here from Mr. October, who is awesome. He's in the Discord, all the places. He says, B-ball or football, which team's offense exceeds their D by more? Which team's O exceeds their D by more? I think it's basketball. Yeah, if I'm reading your question right, and let me know if I'm not. If I'm reading your question right, it's which team has the bigger delta between their offense and their defense? To me, it's basketball, because I think basketball's offense could be 80 a game this year, could be really efficient, could shoot a bunch of threes. I think our offense could bury people. And I worry about our interior defense with this team basketball-wise. I think the delta is going to be closer in football because I think the defense is going to be better. And quite frankly, statistically, they weren't, in some metrics, they weren't terrible last year. So I think football is more balanced. And I think basketball is more offense high, defense potentially lower, would be how I read that. All right, we're going to wrap it up there. Again, on Wisconsin, appreciate you guys so much. Whether you're in the chat, whether you jumped on the live show, whether you are in the Discord, whether you watch later, whether you comment. Honestly, humbled to have you here. Thank you so much. And we will definitely talk later. Bunch of great guests coming up this week. We got Nick Osen. We got Ben Brust coming up on the show this week, which is going to be a lot of fun. Potentially another special guest, which people are going to want to tune into. So on Wisconsin, and we will definitely talk later.